favorite college football program has a big-time quarterback, or even one that's just climbing the ladder after being an elite recruit, you better believe that somebody's probably tampering with him.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal news. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Tampering, quarterback tampering specifically, is going to be the main theme of today's show. I'm going to give an example of a player or two or three that I guarantee you have had overtures, and why tampering is rampant and why the NCAA needs to fix it. Next, Nico and his camp have found a home. It's UCLA. We're going to explain why that's probably going to work out for them in the long run, but it's also a precedent for other college football programs to look at and kind of decide on what you're really looking for. Finally, players that transfer multiple times, that committed multiple times, what does that say about your school when they get one of these players? It's a really murky circumstance. You got to take a little bit of the good with the bad. But first, again, we're going to start off with tampering with college quarterbacks, and this is my take for today. It's rampant. It's going to continue because the NCAA is toothless. Let me give you an example. Avery Johnson at Kansas State, it's a kid I saw a few years ago in Los Angeles at the Elite 11 finals. Incredibly talented, athletic, can throw on the run. The right-handed quarterback could go to his left and throw a dart. He's a guy that had the ability to change directions, put his foot in the ground, and be a very good runner. Matter of fact, this past season for Kansas State, he ran for 639 yards and 6 touchdowns. Obviously, he's an athlete. But is he a developed, fully ready to go Heisman winner? No, he's not that guy yet. But every coach is looking for the next big commodity. And it's not like there are a bunch of studs headed to the portal that are just jumping in randomly. That is why tampering happens. You're not going to win without a big-time quarterback. And I'm not saying that Avery Johnson is going to jump in the portal. I have no idea. But there have been rumors about it. So I just wanted to use him as an example. When you have a guy that's going into his junior year that's got a little bit of experience and a mountain of talent, that is almost a 100% lock that he isn't going to be just tampered with. It's going to be rampant. There's really nothing you can do about it because, again, circle back to it, the NCAA is toothless. They don't penalize anybody. And on the other side, look at it from a coach's perspective. This is something that some people probably don't agree with, but it's true. Coordinators now, at least some of them, make 7 figures. If you don't think a guy that's making 150, 200K as a first-time assistant coach isn't thinking about that, one of the ways to get there is to have a big-time quarterback on your roster. You may not even coach on the offensive side of the ball, but if you know somebody that can get to that player at school X that is a really talented quarterback, to go through the back channel, sometimes it's a high school coach, sometimes it's a 7-on-7 coach, sometimes it's just somebody you know that is around that young man, they're going to probably make an effort to tamper. It is very, very consistent this way. It happens all the time. And to prove it, a lot of the spring games that were canceled or not televised this spring, 100% because of what I'm talking about right now. In fact, I literally had a face-to-face conversation with a college coach recently. I asked him, why aren't y'all having the spring game on TV? And he goes, turned and looked at me like, we don't want people seeing our players that are coming up the ranks that have improved and try to get them to go in the portal. That was the beginning and the end of the conversation. I was like, oh, I mean, it makes sense. That's why you see it across college football. Florida State, for instance, Mike Norvell last year was one of the most open coaches about allowing the local media to come to practices. One practice. All spring. Coincidence? No. This is a problem. But again, to nail it back down to quarterback, if your school has somebody that's either a proven starter or somebody, again, just to use him as an example, Avery Johnson at Kansas State, who is a freak athlete that has 2 years of eligibility left. I guarantee you somebody is tampering with your quarterback. That is not a maybe. Those kind of players, it's a lock. Now, how far down the list does it go? That's partially just an evaluation. Do you think you can get him? Do you have the right amount of NIL? Do you have a connection to the young man? There's a lot of nuances for each individual school. But players like Avery, there's no way Kansas State isn't going to have to deal with that. It's not their fault. They went and recruited him. They got him over Notre Dame. Like Notre Dame tried to flip him. Kansas State kept it. Good job for Kansas State, and I think it's great for college football. But, again, keep in mind, here's the really important factor. If you're that coach and your school is like on that cusp to getting better and everything else, and you got a chance of promotion, even if you're not a receiver coach, a quarterback coach, you could be on the defensive side of the ball. If you can help your school get that quarterback, the most important position at the college football level, and probably the most important position in all of team sport, pretty good chance you're going to do it. And don't forget, there are also the rogue boosters that will go do stuff the school doesn't even know about too. That is also a part of tampering in general. Now, who are some of the guys that I think, besides Avery Johnson, that are locks to get tampered with? Sam Leavitt, Arizona State, 1,000,000%. To my knowledge, he's not going in the portal. He's loyal, and because of it, he's one of my favorite players in college football. I am a college football traditionalist. I love when guys are loyal to their schools, because in the long run, I think it will pay off for them. Relationships, experiences, playing with a team that has a chance to win a title. There's so many ways, and on the back end, you'll get paid. But to each their own. Here are a few other guys that, like, I know in some capacity it was a lock. Gio Lopez, kid that was from Northern Alabama, goes down and plays for South Alabama out of high school. A few schools thought about pulling the trigger late on him. If I remember correctly, Ole Miss was one of them. By the way, Lane Kiffin kind of knows quarterbacks. Gio tore it up this past season. He's a really talented quarterback, but he was at South Alabama. Well, he's in the portal now. He will be a redshirt sophomore next year. He's already been rumored with North Carolina. Do we really think that a G5 school can compete with P4 money in terms of NIL? Of course not. And I'm not saying it was North Carolina that did it. He probably had a ton of schools talk to him. Carolina could have been one. I have no idea. But he's in the portal. I don't blame the young man for looking for the money either. But there's going to be tampering with a guy like that blew up. It's inevitable. To put it in perspective for Avery Johnson, 200 at 344, 2508, 22 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He's not fixed yet, but he's on that cusp. And as a one-year starter, just like with Gio Lopez, that's why they go after him. A couple others for you, and this is where it gets really unique. I talked about this a little bit yesterday. Austin Novosad. He was a guy, same class as Avery Johnson, that went into the portal for high school, if you will. What do I mean by that? It was wild, because at the end, he told us all the way through, I'm sticking with Baylor. I'm sticking with Baylor. He flipped to Oregon. He took the money. That's what I call the high school portal. When you, right before signing day, change your mind, something tells me that you were induced, that recruiting is different. You're allowed to do that. Fair enough. Sounds like he's going to stay at Oregon, but he's not going to be the starter this year. That's going to be Dante Moore, a guy that was also at that Elite 11 finals. That was a really good class in 23. But that doesn't mean somebody's not trying to get to Austin. There's no way there isn't one of those Texas schools. He's a Texas kid from just outside of Austin that isn't trying to get Austin to go to their school. There is zero chance that one of them is. And that doesn't even count the rest of the country. I guarantee you there are opportunities. Here's another one. Notre Dame's quarterback competition is pretty wild. You got a guy that's played in Steve Angeli, and if it wasn't for him, Notre Dame probably doesn't beat Penn State. If you remember, he came in at the end of the first half against Penn State, helped the Irish get a field goal. Now, he hasn't played a ton, but he does have experience, and he's been at the program for 3 years. Been loyal. But that doesn't mean somebody's not trying to tamper with him. Or Kenny Minchey, a very mobile quarterback that is originally from just outside of Nashville, Tennessee, and was another kid in that 23 class that was at the Elite 11 finals. He might be third string. He has the ability, much like Avery Johnson. There's similar players in this regard that can really run. He did a backflip after the touchdown that he scored in the blue gold game for Notre Dame this past weekend. Very good athlete. Somebody is going to try to get him, and he hasn't even played hardly at all, but he has a lot of upside. So here's the question I ask for all of you. Now, I know you're loyal to the school more than the player. That's just typical college football fans. But do you blame any player that's going to be offered 7 figures to make a move from school A to school B? If they're making $300,000-$400,000, that's still nice. But if they're going to go up to 7 figures, should they at least consider? I'm not saying take or not. Should they at least consider that opportunity? Put yourself in their shoes. It's not easy. When we come back, I'm going to talk about Nico Iamaleava. He's going to UCLA. What does that mean not only for him and his camp, but college football? That is next here on the Portal Podcast. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Finding the right talent is important. So if you need marketing campaigns taken care of or anything similar, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert delivered with incredible results. It's also fast. If you want to post your job, it's free and simple. And within a day, multiple qualified candidates are likely there to choose from. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's Upwork.com, Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Nico Iamaleava is going to UCLA. I'm happy for him individually. He's going to go back home. He's from the greater Los Angeles area, and I think it's long overdue that UCLA had a big-time quarterback. Now, the whole process, everybody has their take, and I've given mine on Nico, but I want to give a general thought here and kind of expand it on how your favorite program will probably use this. Not definitely, but probably. Some will probably still take the bait, but whatever. Nico's camp, in my opinion, was the problem, not Nico. I've gotten some pushback on that, but I like Nico as a person. I've been around him. He was awesome. When I talked to him and interviewed him, he was one of the most fun guys that I've ever been around. He's the kind of guy that you want to go hang out with because his personality is so awesome. With that being stated, the people around you impact your recruitment, how you end up being perceived at the college level. Obviously, Nico is being thrown over the coals right now. And part of that's on him, but part of that's who your family is and what's being said externally, then you can't do nothing about it. But the quarterback position is really important from a social and political standpoint in college football. It impacts your recruiting. It really impacts what we call the bubble in sport administration or sport marketing. What is the bubble? Donations. Those guys that write 7-figure checks, if they don't like what's going on with your quarterback, that doesn't go well. And then there is just TV. People don't tune in if they're not happy with what's going on at your quarterback position. They don't want to watch, or could go up in a sense in terms of viewership because you get hate watchers. It's a whole nother subject matter. But the bottom line, quarterback play really dictates what goes on with the money, which drives college football, and it changes who is or is not employed at a given school. A lot of schools get guys that they think are going to be a head coach for 5-10 years. But if they miss for any reason at the quarterback position, they gone. You can't win without quarterbacks. So do you take the talent? Here's the real question. Do you take the talent like Nico? Because you can't tell me there wasn't a sign of some kind that his camp was going to be difficult based on his original negotiation. Tennessee went all in, and they've got a tremendous NIL group. Absolutely tremendous. But they've had to know that at some point there were going to be issues. Now, they may not have known there was going to be a push to renegotiate at the end of spring ball. That's probably asking a little much for UT or anybody around them. But Josh Heupel, by the way, who did a tremendous job of explaining what he could, without going too far into detail at his press conference recently, they had to have that idea. So here's the other question. Who's going to follow this lead? Because it's so tempting to go take that elite quarterback if you can get him. It doesn't happen very often. There's only so many. And Nico is absolutely an elite talent. He's obviously not flourished the way we would have liked to have seen last year, but that was his first full year. He's got 2 years of eligibility. I imagine he's going to be a lot better this year and then the next. Do you take a risk on a guy, even if the people around him are probably going to push the pile all the time? Possibly creating havoc in your locker room? That's something that you got to think about. It's not easy because, again, what's the most important position in team sports? Quarterback. It is a really hard position to be in if you're an NIL collective, an athletic director. You mean Greg Sankey. I'm sure he's had conversations with coaches. He may have even talked to Heupel about it. I imagine he's just curious. If I was Sankey, I would probably ring him up. Somebody that, hey, man, how did this work? What did you think? How can I help other schools? How can I help college football? How can I help schools that are at the G5 level? We need to avoid this stuff. This is not good for our sport. I'm sure there are a lot of head coaches that in some way, shape, or form have talked to different conference commissioners, even if they're not in their own league. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody in the Big Ten front office is like, hey, can we get Heupel on the phone? I want to get a little take from him. I wouldn't blame him. Information is gold. So last point here on this. I think there will be more schools that take the bait, but it's going to have to be truly elite talent. You're going to see fewer. This is just my prediction and my take. There are going to be fewer schools that deal with difficult family situations, groups of people that have their own organization, and it's, a legit business. But if they're really hardline on what they want, you're going to see a lot fewer kids have true commitment opportunities out of the high school ranks. And to that point, when they enter the portal, there may be stuff that's reported, but be very, very careful what you believe. Just take everything with a grain of salt, because if you go talk to a school, that doesn't mean there was an offer made by that school or even a counter offer to what you want. They may see your asking price and be like, we appreciate you stopping by. And that's it. It's not hard to understand why, because again, once you let the cows out of the barn, it's hard to get them back in. You need to round them up. That quarterback gets that deal that's probably overblown. Well, then your star middle linebacker, your star receiver. How about that left tackle that's protecting the quarterback? It continues. There have been a lot of coaches that talk about that, and they were right. And that's where I got this from. It's not any one. There's been a bunch. Once you open Pandora's box like that, your locker room can go south. Been a lot of schools that have made that error, and they regret it. When we come back, I want to finish up with one more take. I've seen quite a few players that are in the portal that had previously had a high school career with multiple commitments, and then they've transferred already multiple times too. What does that mean if your school took that player? We're going to discuss that next here on the Portal Podcast. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, FanDuel will allow you to place your first $5 bet, and you can get $250 in bonus bets if that $5 bet wins. Here's one of the things about FanDuel that is simple. You can just bet on a player prop. For me, with basketball, I was a guy that loved to shoot threes, so it would be over-unders on three-pointers more often than not. It could be anything else too. Number of assists, the number of shots made. There's a million different ways you can use player prop bets. However, you can also still do it traditionally, even if you don't get in early on the game. If the game started, you can do live betting with FanDuel. Don't miss out. Head over to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Commitments, decommitments, transfers, and more transfers. What happens when your school is the one that takes a player that's, let's just say, well-traveled? I'm going to keep this kind of short, but I find it interesting. I've had this conversation with other recruiting analysts, 7-on-7 coaches, college coaches. There's more and more growing concern, even if there's an elite player. Bear Alexander is probably the best example I can think of. He changed high schools 4 times. He changed colleges 4 or 5 times. Like, I wouldn't want that guy. He's unbelievably talented. I wouldn't want him on my roster. I don't think he's good for your locker room. Everybody has their opinion, but that's mine. And here's my take. There are a few kids, I'm not going to name any names, in terms of coming up the high school ranks. I can kind of see things that are trending that way. But there are also college guys. Once you're in college, I don't mind bringing up who you are. And there can always be somebody that you're like, man, what is going on here? Why is this guy in the portal again? Is there a particular reason? Is it something that happened? Let me give you an example here. Colorado wide receiver Adrian Wilson, talented player out of high school. He's transferring from Colorado to North Carolina, but in high school, he was committed to TCU, Oregon, and Arizona State before flipping to Colorado. So he had 4 commitments, and now he's on his 2nd college. And he's only a freshman right now. I mean, that's 6 different institutes. Are we sure? I mean, Bill Belichick is changing his roster over. He's probably going to take a few more chances this year than he will. But that would concern me. I don't know the kid, but 6 schools. You know what I mean? Like, that's where we're at. That's hard. Oh, excuse me, 5. My bad. 5 schools still in just over a year that he's either been committed to or transferred to. Okay, that's hard. I don't think many coaches are going to put up with that unless they're in flip the roster mode. And Bill Belichick in North Carolina, I think, are pretty safely in that camp. Hopefully, your school, whoever it is you root for, is not doing that. That is a rough pill to swallow. But as the saying goes, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. And that's when it'll happen. I can tell you this much. If you look at the programs that advanced to the college football playoff last year, the vast majority of them, at basically every position, didn't have to take those kinds of players. There are exceptions, but not many. Arizona State was probably one. Boise might have taken a few, and they made it in. But the P4 schools like Ohio State, Notre Dame, Penn State, they'll take transfers, but those are guys that probably have relationships at some capacity in high school. And when they transferred, most of them, it was a one-time transfer. Again, there are some exceptions, but if you look at their rosters, they're built through the high school ranks, and they took kids that were committed to the school in their long-term development. Not, I'm going to take the quick NIL or this happened or this happened. It's not exactly what I want, so I'm jumping ship. You got to be careful for what you ask, even if a guy is really talented. Kind of goes back to that point I made earlier about the quarterbacks. Do you really want that guy if the camp around him is a little bit suspect or they're constantly nagging you for more money? Do you really want that guy in your program? It's a rough situation because sometimes he could be your best option. You got to make a decision, and that's a gut check time. And college coaches make a lot of money to make those decisions. I know that, but it would be very difficult for me because I want guys committed to where I'm at and the program as a whole long term. That's just me. And again, I'm old school. I'm very traditional in that I want to have a program that is built through the high school recruiting ranks, but everybody has their own opinion. Thank you once again for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to go your latest recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal news. It's a lot of fun for me. And with the portal being open through the end of next week, next Friday, it will be the last day. There's going to be all kinds of stuff. I will make one last prediction as we walk out the door here. There's going to be a quarterback that you didn't expect that transfers. Just remember I said that. It's bound to happen. I don't know who it's going to be, but there's going to be one. Thank you once again for joining today's show, and we will see you again soon on the Portal Podcast.